Uh, Sorry about that. I was broadcasting and all that streaming, and then I didn't notice because my mic meter was going up and down and up and down and up and down. So I thought that I was fine, but on this there's a little speaker icon, and it had a little X on it, and what that means is that the speaker is that it's not sending the voice sound to the streamer. So so I apologize for that. Okay. Okay. Anyway, no harm done. Anyway, so let me start off with what I had, with what I said before, um, and that is, yeah, let me close that door. Okay, let me start off with what I and reiterate some of the things I said before. Um, first, first we want to talk about China. China, 'cause there's been some discussion on some of the various channels on YouTube about about potential for war there. And well, first of all, when it comes to countries, obviously there's always a possibility for war. Whenever there's tensions and all that, there's possibility for war. China has been threatening war for a long time now, and unfortunately, when countries threaten war, there's a high degree of probability that a war will happen because that's the history of it. That's what happens on over and over again. You know, but then of course there are wars like World War One where there were no threats, but it just kind of happened. That, how World War One starts is that's always fun. If you've never looked into that, I recommend it. It's hilarious in a very grim sort of way, by the way, very grim. But anyway, but look, Hitler and Mussolini, they threatened war. Um, you know, wars usually start with threats, or at least they're preceded by threats. And so there is a chance that China might do that. On the other hand, I want people to have a balanced view of things. China's ability to make war is actually quite limited. It can make war. China traditionally has been a land power, so it can make war on its land border areas. That it could do. But even there, it's somewhat limited. To make war against India, that's tough because you're going over the mountains, and India is just as big a population, so there's no advantages there. So that's unlikely way to go for any kind of success. South Vietnam, maybe, but they're not threatening that direction now. They're threatening Taiwan. Well, the thing is that China does not have the ability to attack Taiwan. It doesn't have the means and the resources, is what I mean. It's not a matter of population. It's not even a matter of wealth. You have to have the equipment. And then nature, it's nice if nature helps a little bit. Right now, in the situation, nature's not helping. You see, the Taiwan Strait typically has sea states of 5 or higher. Now, according to those who are true experts in amphibious invasions and warfare, the United States Marines, you got to have sea state 3 or lower to be able to do an invasion. Why? Sea state 5 or higher, the landing ships will be awash and turned over. They won't make it to shore. They'll sink. That's number one. Number two, technology has moved on, making amphibious warfare hard to say impossible. It's really difficult for any prepared opponent. Think about it. In D-Day, the 5,000 ships that we sent over for D-Day were all stealth ships. All of them. Why? Because the Germans didn't have radar. That's why. And so all our ships, when our ships showed up there, they were real surprised. Even after the invasion was going on, they still didn't believe that there was an invasion going on there. They thought that was a fake invasion. If they had radar, they could have seen, oh my God, 5,000 ships. I guess it's real. But nowadays, we have all kinds of radars and sensors and satellites. And there's no way that China can assemble for an invasion and not have Taiwan know all about it. But not only that, Taiwan has all kinds of missiles. And to think that Taiwan doesn't have world-class missiles every bit as good as America's isn't looking at it right, in my opinion. All the best chips that we use to put into our Raytheon and Lockheed missiles and all that, they come from Taiwan. Taiwan has all that. And they have good engineers and good designers, so they know how to design the ECCM, ECM, and spoofing, and all other kinds of electronic warfare capabilities to make their missiles effective. And so, if China sends a fleet to Taiwan, I doubt that fleet's going to reach Taiwan. I have done, a good half dozen artificial intelligence war games. And so far, China's not even gotten within 30 miles of Taiwan. I play the head of Taiwan, and the artificial intelligence plays the head of China, and I sink enough of the ships within 30 miles of Taiwan to basically scrap that invasion. I just do it with missiles. And I'm not even, and then when I'm doing that, I'm not even using all of the facilities and all the capabilities that Taiwan has. Like if China does a blockade, Taiwan could blockade China. Simple as that. They could blockade China in a moment. Because blockades don't take ships anymore. Blockades take missiles. And that is what's going to, and so things are not as easy and as simple for China as a lot of the analysts and a lot of the journalists like to make out. Not at all. China's ability to invade Taiwan is hardly existent. They can cause a lot of damage, they can cause a lot of death, but to actually invade? No. Anyway, let's move on to Trump and the American elections for Senate. I have put forth in earlier videos. I put out ones where I estimate that the Senate is going to be 58 Democrats, 42 Republicans in the next election. I'm basically what I am anticipating is an impact similar to 1932, when there were 12 additional Democrats in the Senate in 32 than there were in 31, and I'm anticipating that. And could it be wrong? Well, YouGov thinks I'm wrong. YouGov thinks there's going to be 59. There you go. That is, if you take the YouGov statistics, the YouGov poll statistics on the popularity of Trump as an indicator as to whether or not that state is going to vote Democrat or Republican in the Senate race. Assuming that this next election is a referendum on Trump, which I think is a halfway reasonable assumption, I see it as being a referendum on Trump and his policies. I think that it's so. I think that if a state is an overall disapproval of Trump as opposed to overall approval of Trump, then I think that that state is highly likely going to vote in a Democratic senator, and that's how I see it. Yeah, I got to get rid of some, trying to get rid of some activity on my computer because there's being a little bit of a lag here, and that might be coming from that. So I'm closing down some activity here. Okay. Okay, where were we? Okay, so I see places like Texas going for Trump because according to YouGov poll, Texas is 17% for, or I'd say not for, but against Trump, and that 70% is high. That surprised me how high it was because that's only about 4% lower than Minneapolis or Minnesota, where things have been going crazy. Um, so that's extremely high down there. I would like to understand why Trump's approval was so low in Texas. But anyway, if that poll is correct, that means that Cronin doesn't have a chance, snowball's chance in hell of staying in the office next year. The next one I want to look at is Louisiana. Now, Louisiana is interesting because Cassidy's been in for 2 terms now, and he's been very popular, relatively popular. But things have changed in Louisiana, and this is something that the analysts and like Silver and Cook and Let's Talk Elections don't pick up. Because the structural change in the elections in Louisiana will profoundly change who can be elected senator. Now Cassidy is a moderate Republican. And he's a moderate Republican because that is the outcome of the previous structure, which was open primaries. Now, in an open primary, what an open primary is when people go to vote. Anybody could get a Republican ballot, a Democrat, a Republican, or independent can get a Republican ballot and choose who they want to have as the Republican nominee. That's an open primary. And that favors those Republican candidates that also appeal to independents, especially. Well, recently, Louisiana went to a closed primary system. And in a closed primary system, it's very different. Now, only a Republican get a Republican ballot for the primary. And only a Democrat can get the Democrat ballot for the primary. And the independents, they're screwed. They get no ballot to vote on anybody for anything in the primary. So, in the primary, only Republicans are voting. And most Republicans are good loyal Trumpists and MAGA voters. And so anybody who's towards the middle, not going to make it. You know, now Trump has already said he hates Cassidy and all, but it wouldn't have mattered if he didn't say anything about Cassidy at all. Cassidy still, is dead man walking. He hasn't a chance in hell of becoming a candidate. Now, what does that mean for the general election, though? So now the general election comes around, and now you have this very solid MAGA Republican candidate in Louisiana. And Louisiana, the breakdown is roughly about 35, 36% Democrats, 35, 36 Republicans for Republican. And then they have to pick up the independents, the majority of the independents. Well, what do we know from current polls? Independents around the country are breaking 70-30 towards the Democrats. So I think that Louisiana is now I think that's going to be a very easy a Democratic pickup in November. So that puts me at very big odds against Silver and Cook and Let's Talk Elections. They all, as far as I know, they all still have that as a red state. I see it as blue. I told you my reasoning. If you agree with me, please put in the comments. I'd like to hear it. If you don't agree with me, which is pretty possible, and I perfectly admit that I could be wrong. I'm just giving you how I analyze things and why I analyze things the way I do. So I'm not just. This isn't just strictly wishful thinking. Well, there might be a little bit of that in there. I think I'm on fairly solid analytical ground on it. But if you think I'm not, please put it in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. Anyway, see where was I with this? Anyway, so that's going to go Democrat. Now let's talk about the next one, which I think is going to be, which is also against the grain of what's going on, of how the analysts are saying, is I think that Ashley Moody in Florida is likely going to lose. And to me, the indicator for that election is the mayor election that occurred in December. I don't know if you follow that at all, but in December there, the mayor election there, a Democrat won. Now, normally that is not a big surprise at all because if you go around the country, Democrats dominate in almost all the cities. Even the small cities in big red states like Indianapolis or Des Moines, Iowa, these are run by Democrats typically. And so if you go down to Miami, you would have thought the same thing. Not knowing a damn thing about Miami, I always I would have assumed that it was a Democrat running the place because that's our structure in this country. I would have been wrong. It seems Republicans have dominated the mayor office in Miami for the past 30-some years. And they've always won it handily. Like 60-40, they always won it by a near landslide or more. There was never they weren't squeakers like 52-48 or something like that. No, it was a solid Republican, easy Republican win. And then along comes last year, December, and what happens? Democrats win like 65-35, something like that. There was like a 60-point swing from Republicans to Democrats in that election. And when I saw that, I thought to myself, "Holy fuck! What the hell happened here?" So I looked a little deeper, and Florida's an interesting state. As you all know, as you probably know, Florida has been a decidedly red state for the past 20 years or more. Before that, it was a purple state. I'm not sure it was ever a Democratic state per se, but it's been a red state now for quite a while. But one reason why that is the case, one of the major reasons why the Republicans have dominated and held steady in Florida is because they've had steady support, wide support from the Cuban Americans. And when I looked into it, because I thought that was odd, because most of the Hispanic groups I know and people I know who are Hispanic, are more toward the Democratic side. So I thought that was odd. Well, it turns out that they became Republican, as I understand it, after John F. Kennedy canceled the Bay of Pigs invasion. They were pissed about that because they saw the Bay of Pigs invasion as being their chance to get Castro out and they go back and get their homes. And that didn't work out. So they were angry with them, and so they became Republicans, and they stayed true to republicanism, to the Republican Party, all this time. So they're very good, loyal, steadfast people. Kind you want on your side. But ICE got a fellow by the name of Cito Perez in last summer, put him in detention, and he died. He was a 75-year-old Cuban American, brought over or come over when he was 65. So he's only maybe like 15 years old, something like that, when he came over. And he was very well respected, very well liked, and he died. Now, was he murdered, or did he just die from neglect? Well, he supposedly had a heart condition, and I guess there was some difficulty or some mix-up with him getting his medication. So maybe he died because of incompetence. But it doesn't matter. When people die, people stop thinking, "Oh, well, there was good excuses." No, they're very pissed. But not only that, Cuban Americans, they've been going around harassing people of all kinds and all colors, and including straight up good old European-looking American citizens, and they're getting stopped and harassed and killed by ICE. Alex Pretty and Renee Nicole Good up in Minneapolis, they looked as European as I do. So, and they were killed. So, so I'm as much in danger of being shot by ICE as anybody else is. Anyway, but the Cuban Americans pissed off about that. That's how I take that election. And if that is true, according to throughout the state, I think we can extrapolate that Miami result to the rest of the state. And if that's the case, I think that Moody's cooked. Don't forget there are other things going on. It's not just Cuban Americans. There's also the collapse of the tourism industry. There's also the collapse of the real estate industry. So there's just a number of miseries going on in Florida right now. Inflation, of course, as everybody else is experiencing. Groceries are expensive. So I think that there's going to be I think that Ashley Moody has got her work cut out for her, and she's not a traditional campaigner. She's not an old line politician. So for her to campaign I don't think she's going to. I just don't think she's going to be that good at it, and I think she's going to, and that's why I pick her as a loser as well. So that would give us Florida, Louisiana, and Texas, 3 states. That alone would get us up to 50. Would get up to 50 Democrats, and then we throw on, Georgia, and North Carolina, and Maine. That's another one. And then Iowa. I think Joni Ernst is out in Iowa. I think Susan Collins up in Maine. I'm going to talk about them another time. But with them, with these states, and of course Michigan, that's where I get to my 50, that's where I got to my 56, and now with Texas and Louisiana and Florida going into my analysis, I've now upped my count to 58, and that's That's pretty aggressive. I grant you that. I grant you that. That's aggressive. And a lot would have to go right. And one thing would have to happen. One thing that has to happen for this, for what I say could happen, for that to really come about, the Democrats have to stop doing one thing that they constantly do over and over and over again. There is a tradition in the Democratic Party of pulling victory out from the jaws of defeat. I mean, picking defeat out from the jaws of victory. Sorry, I got that reversed. They pick defeat out from the jaws of victory. They do that all the time. They should win. They're on the verge of winning. They just don't screw up. They'll win. And then they screw up. You know, how many times have you seen a race where the Democrats should have won, they didn't, and then you look into it and you go, oh yeah, he did this, they did that, she did this, she did that. Oh, if only they didn't do this, and they might have won. And like last year with Kamala Harris, if she had not done victory laps before the election, she might have won. She had campaigned hard. And I'm sorry, going around the country telling people, "Hey, I'm so happy I'm a woman, and you're gonna vote for me." No, that's not why people vote. You damn well better come up with some policies and some directions, and put that in the front of what you want to talk about, not on the back end. Kamala Harris rejoiced too much, in my opinion, and that was one thing that led to her defeat. And by the way, Hillary did the same thing in 2016. Just because she's a woman, woohoo! And I'm like, stop celebrating before you win. That's not going to help at all. One, it looks bad. Two, it actually suppresses turnout because now people will say, "Oh, she's going to win. I don't think I'll have to go out and vote. I don't have to get up early today to do that. Thank you very much." Dumb. But the history of Democratic Party finding a way to beat themselves, that goes way back. Like I said, with the Democrats, it's almost a damn tradition. So can they do that now? Can they find some way to screw this up? Yeah. I have full confidence in their creativity to do that. And that's one thing that scares me. But I try to keep a happy face and hope that they don't do that, and that they will, that they'll succeed despite themselves. And next year we'll have a solid majority Democratic Senate. And I hope that that's the case. Anyway, I'm going to let y'all go now. Again, I do this every evening about 9 o'clock. I did it 9 o'clock tonight, but I had to redo it because I screwed up. My mic wasn't on. Well, the mic itself was on. This was actually on, but the problem was it was the connection between my video recording software and the streaming service was not connected. The little speaker icon had an X on it. Yeesh. I'm learning this stuff. I'm learning. I'm getting better at it, but I'm still making a couple mistakes. I'm going to try and not make the same mistakes over and over and over again. I'll try and make new ones, if that's right. Okay. So anyway, by the way, if you have any ideas, or your ideas differ from mine, that's totally fine. I've made enough mistakes to know I'm not God. I know that my analyses are just that. They're just analyses, and they have just as much ability to be wrong as right. But I give you I do give you my thinking, explaining why I think certain things. I'm not just merely saying it. I am giving you an explanation of why I think a certain way. and why I think, and then you have the chance to either agree or disagree with my thinking. Maybe you think I'm overstating a case, or maybe you think I'm not going far enough. Up to you. Anyway, but please respond with the comments. If there's a topic that you would like me to address, please put that in the comments as well. If not, hopefully I'll see you here tomorrow at 9 o'clock, and we'll go from there. Okay? Thank you very much.